your culture, education, upbringing, beliefs, experiences, imagination, relationships, personality, and your values are some of the things that have not just eaten deep into your nature, but they have become your very nature. When was the last time you questioned any of these things? When was the last time you questioned how you think? Join me, Emmanuel Utomi, and my guests every Monday from 9 p.m. on PRZ 109.2 FM London on Paspektives, because how you think powers your worldviews, actions, and your ultimate reality. So, come on, let us explore alternative ways of looking at life's issues. Paspektives. What you already know should not stand in the way of what you could learn.
And a very, 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 very beautiful evening to you, my dear listeners. You are welcome to the Prayer Rally Zone, PRZ 109.2 FM. And yes, this is Paspektives, the show that is exclusively designed to take you one step closer to a better life. And my name is Emmanuel Utomi. You are welcome to a new month. It's the second month of the supposedly new year. And as you know, time and tide, they say, waits for no man. So if you have set a goal for this year, and I hope you have, I'm hoping that by now you have buckled down and you're aiming towards achieving that goal. You know, I want to say very, very big thank you to you for joining me today, for spending or sharing your evening with me. And today indeed promises to be a beautiful one. We are going to be learning a few things. We are going to be discussing a few things also. And I want you to sit back, relax, enjoy. And if you'd like to be a part of the program, say you have a question or a comment, or there's a topic that you would like for us to discuss on this program, you can get in touch. You can send me an email. Send your emails to perspectives@przfm.com. That's perspectives@przfm.com. And as usual, perspective is spelled in a different way. It's spelled at PASPEKTIVES. That's PASPEKTIVES. That's perspectives@przfm.com. Or you could send me a tweet at Paspektives, or if you prefer to send a text message or call, you could dial the number 0757 260 5435. And like I said earlier, you are welcome to Paspektives, the show that is designed to take you one step closer to a better life. And my name is Emmanuel Utomi. This is a new month, like I said, and for those joining us for probably the first time, or you're joining us for the second time, I'd like to just encourage you that Paspektives is designed to get you to question how you think. This is one of the purposes of perspective. We said the point is that here, how you think determines your reality. So it therefore means that the very starting point of every form of success or change that you will eventually experience in life, or that you desire in life, must start from the way you think. It is said that everything is created twice. So before you achieve that goal in reality, somewhere at the back of your mind, somewhere in your thought process, you would have already seen it. That way you can work towards it. Perspective is also designed to get you to develop a habit or the habit of thinking differently. This is not just about questioning how you think and how you believe, but to get you to question the norms or the accepted standards in our society, and to ask yourself this question: have they been moving me in the direction that I would want to go? Are they enhancing my progress towards the results that I'd want to achieve? Do you realize that certain norms or beliefs are actually designed to ensure that you do not grow beyond a particular point or achieve certain goals? Actually, on the other hand, those same norms and beliefs could also be designed or responsible for helping you achieve your goals and your results. I think the difference here is getting to the point where once your thought process, once your habits has helped you achieve the goal you've set out, can you therefore say that it has done its best and therefore we need to move on? Like Albert Einstein said, he said the significant thought that we have that has helped us create, I'm paraphrasing now, that has helped us create this problem has done its best. Now, for us to deal with this problem, we need to think in a much more different way. So that's one of the things that Perspectives is designed to help you achieve. It's also designed to help you develop a progressive and a solution-based mindset. See, things will always happen that will impact your life, and sometimes the impact will be in undesirable ways, but it's how you as an individual chooses to interpret this event that life throws at you. It is how you interpret this event that will determine the direction that your life goes. Look, remember, it's not what that happen. It's not the things that happens to you that counts. It is how you think about those things. It's the meanings that you attach to the occurrences of the events in your life that would make a difference. Listen, Perspective is a show that is designed to help you find alternative ways of thinking about life situations and circumstances. It helps you turn what life throws at you that is designed to pull you down. It helps you make those things stepping stones to the next level that you desire in life. So I want you to join me. Call your friends. Download this broadcast from SoundCloud and just go for it. Share it amongst your friends and have a discussion around it. And that is what Perspective is really about. Now, the theme for this month, because for those that are joining us this month for newly, I'd like to explain this, that each month on Perspectives, we have a different theme that we look at and that we stay with throughout the month. And this month, our discussion is going to be centered around Joseph, the son of Jacob, from the Bible book of Genesis. So we're actually going to be looking at some lessons, things that we can learn from Joseph's life. Again, you are listening to Perspectives on the Prayer Rallies on PRZ 109.2 FM, and my name is Emmanuel Utomi. So let's look at let's look at some of the things about Joseph's life. But before we do that, one of the things I've realized is this, that we all love the rags to riches story. You know, those stories where some very deprived person is able to rise above all the challenges and the heartaches and pains they experience, and then they just go on, then they go through countless challenges, but then somewhere along the line they eventually become winners. They are able to overcome those challenges. They're able to learn from those experiences. They're able to deal with those heartaches and pain, and they come out very, very refined and achievers. We love those stories. Or it might be stories like the standard David and Goliath type stories of this world, where, you know, some small underdog takes on the all-powerful or unbeatable champion, and to see that underdog win in the end is, I don't know, it's just like a source of hope. It motivates us, it inspires us, because sometimes we see ourselves in those people, we see ourselves in those underdogs, and we're saying to ourselves, well, if they can do it, well, so can I. If it has gone well for that person, then it can go well for me also. But you see, for me, when I listen to such stories, for me, it goes beyond the excitement. It goes beyond the motivation. In fact, a classic story like that is one that I heard when I was in boarding house, when I was in my younger years in secondary school. And it was actually the story about, because in boarding house those days, and this was way back in Nigeria then, there was this huge guy. This guy was about over 6 foot, about 6'7" or so, or thereabout. And he was huge. And for some strange reason, this big guy kept picking on this particular little guy. I mean, this smaller guy was probably about 5'2" and very skinny. And because of the differences in size, it was easy for this bigger guy to bully and really beat up this younger guy. Then until one day, something happened. You know, after being beat up, this small guy got up and told this big guy, you know what? If you don't kill me, I am not gonna give up. And he would seek this big guy and he will go after him. And each time this little guy turns up, this bigger guy will just beat the living daylights out of him. But it was funny because this small guy devised a strategy. At night, when this bigger guy is asleep, this little guy will go wake him up and say, look, you know what? You ain't done yet. Beat me. And this bigger guy will beat him. When this bigger guy is even in his classroom, during school hours, this smaller guy will wander into his classroom in the presence of the teachers and say to him, beat me. And this bigger guy at some point became confused. And this bigger guy realized that, look, he will not be able to keep up this. So one of the days that this smaller guy came up to him and said, you have to start beating me once more. The bigger guy said, you know what? I am sorry. It stops. And that was the day that bigger guy stopped bullying this younger guy and actually became his champion. For me, the story goes beyond the emotional aspect of it, or of how this little guy was able to overcome the threats of this bigger guy, the bullying, all the negative attention he was getting. It was about how he had resolved that this thing would stop, how persistent he was about pursuing to wear this guy out. So for me, when I listen to such stories, you see, while I celebrate the underdog, I also want to know what they did. What were their principles? What did they have to go through? How did they eventually overcome these obstacles? Or maybe it was a handicap that they actually had to overcome. And the reason why I do this is very simple. You see, I strongly believe that there are certain principles that they may have operated in. I mean, these underdogs, that there are certain principles that they may have operated in, and that if I am able to just identify what those principles are, if I'm able to identify what those habits were, and not just identify them, but also understand and move on from just identifying and understanding to implementing those principles, those habits, I might, just by doing that, be able to reproduce those same results in my own life. And that's my desire. It's not good enough to just hear the story, enjoy it, and just leave it out. What have you learned? Brian Tracy said something once. He said, each time you pick a book, before you start, you should ask yourself a question. What will change in my life as a result of what I am about to learn? Simple question. Each time you want to watch a movie, each time you hear a story, each time you read an article, each time you read a book, each time you have an experience, you should ask yourself, what will change in my life as a result of the lessons or as a result of the story, the book that I've read? Don't just read it and end up like someone who has not even read that book in the first place. Things should change. Again, remember, perspectives is all about encouraging you to question how you think. It's about helping you think differently. So how would your life change when you learn these things? So when you listen to the stories, what should change? You see, these types of stories, given, like I said earlier, they are designed to inspire us. They are designed to give us hope, to dream, to help us believe that that difficult situation will turn out well, and that somehow, in some way, shape or form, everything will be all right in the end. But like I said, that which interests me the most when I listen to such stories are the lessons I can learn from the lives of these people. And you know what? Sometimes those lessons are buried in plain sight. Well, on the other hand, sometimes those lessons are actually not so obvious. But if your goal is to learn when you hear such stories, if your goal is to learn when you read such stories, if your goal is to grow and become an improved and better version of yourself, then you will listen through ears that are critical. You will listen to learn and to improve. So this is my encouragement for you, because that's what we're going to actually be doing today. Last month, we looked at the story of Nehemiah, and we looked at 11 different principles, attitudes that you could form to help you plan a successful year. Now this month, we're looking at lessons from the life of Joseph. So again, we're saying Joseph. Let me just share some background on the life of Joseph, and we'll just take it from there. We know, for those who are Christians who are listening, you know that the story of Joseph, as recorded in the Bible book of Genesis, Joseph was born somewhere in the deserts of Paddan Aram, but he eventually became the second in command to one of the most powerful kings in one of the most powerful nations during his time. But you see, Joseph did not achieve this by prayer and fasting. Now, don't get me wrong. Before you crucify me, just listen. I know I said Joseph did not achieve this by prayer and fasting. Now, I am not in any way, shape or form saying that we should stop praying or fasting, particularly, like I said, for my Christian brothers and sisters out there. But realize that there is, let me put it this way, what is the essence of prayer and fasting? Are you praying and you're using prayer as an end in itself or as a means to an end? Are you fasting as an end in itself or as a means to an end? In Mark 9:29, yes, in Mark chapter 9 and verse 29, Jesus said to the disciples, "This one will not come out except by prayer and fasting." The story is actually that of when Jesus had been on the Mount of Transfiguration. And when he came down from the mountain, he realized that there was some commotion that involved the Pharisees and the Sadducees and his disciples. And when he made inquiries, Jesus realized that it was about the story of a boy who was possessed by a demon. And the father of the boy came to Jesus and said, "You know what? I've asked your disciples to try and cast out this demon from this boy, and they've not been able to do it." And when Jesus looked at his disciples, he said to them, "Why are you so faithless? How long am I going to be with you?" And Jesus just went to the boy and cast the demon out. And afterwards, his disciples came to him and said, "But Jesus, why were we not able to do this?" And Jesus said, "This one will not come out except by prayer and by fasting." And one of the questions I usually ask is, when was it that Jesus went to go and pray before he casted out that demon? He didn't. The reason is because the essence of prayer and fasting is to receive instruction from God on what to do about a particular situation. I strongly believe that because Jesus has access to God to receive instructions from him, he knew what to say to that demon. He knew how to handle that situation. So not only was he wasn't moved by the things that he saw or felt or what other people were saying or the stories he'd been hearing. He was moved by what God said about that situation. And when he spoke God's words and when he obeyed God's instructions in his action in that situation, he got the results that God ordained for that time. And it is the same thing with Joseph. Beyond the prayer and fasting, Joseph was able to receive instructions from God. But then again, let me not get carried away. You know what? Let's tone it down. Again, I would say you are on the prayer rallies on PRZ 109.2 FM, and this is Perspectives, the show that is designed to take you one step closer to a better life. And my name is Emmanuel Utomi. And this month we're looking at lessons from the life of Joseph, the son of Jacob, from the Bible book of Genesis. Let me put it this way. We know the story that Joseph was able to rise from the backside of the desert to become the second in command in one of the most powerful kingdoms during his time. I mean, what are the odds? Think about it. What are the odds? For example, what are the odds that someone born, how do I want to say from somewhere on the backside in a village in a remote part of Nigeria in Africa, what are the odds that that person would grow up and eventually get sold into slavery, in the UK, go into prison and rise from the prison to become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Seriously, what are the odds? It is next to impossible. However, Joseph achieved this. So I strongly believe that if this could have happened in the life of Joseph, and we can identify the principles that Joseph operated by, if we can identify the habits that he operated in, we might be able to produce, maybe not become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom or America, but we might be able to excel in whatsoever field that we choose. So I want to invite you to come with me on this journey. Let's explore the life of Joseph. What were some of the events what were those events that conspired to bring about who he eventually became? What happened in his life? I mean, how did he become so hated by his siblings? I mean, his siblings did not like him in any way, shape, or form. If there was something they wished, they wished him dead. His own siblings. How was he able to survive these death threats over his life? How was Joseph able to make it through his time as a slave? How was he able to make it through the slave routes? How was he able to survive in slavery in the house of one of the top officials in Pharaoh's army? By the way, Pharaoh is the title of the king of Egypt in those days. How did Joseph survive in prison? What led him? What were the events that led him to appear before the king? And how did he conduct himself when he was before the king? If we're able, not if, these are the things that we're going to be looking at. And I know as we look at that, we will eventually learn some of the principles that we need to imbibe in our lives to move forward. Now, in order to appreciate the story of Joseph, we actually need to take a step back and look at some aspects of his father's life. That's unique. In order to appreciate what made Joseph who he is, we actually need to take a look at his father's life. His father's name was Jacob or Israel. Well, as he was later named by the angel, he later came to be known as Israel. Because Jacob's life will set a backdrop for us for our discussion today. So, question is, what do we know about the life of Joseph's father Jacob? We know for a fact that Jacob himself was a twin. He was the twin brother of Esau. And you know what? Their relationship wasn't one of the very best, because Esau wanted to kill Jacob for stealing his blessings. We also know that Jacob had to run away from his home, and he had to run to his uncle's house, which was in another city and another town, far away from his parents. His uncle's name was Laban. So Jacob spent most of quite a chunk of his adult life growing up, getting married in Laban's house. We also know that when Jacob ended up in Laban's house, his uncle, he fancied one of Laban's daughters, Rachel, because he said Rachel was so beautiful. And Laban made a deal with him. All right, I'd rather get you to marry him, since you're my nephew. I'd rather get you marry him than to allow one of these hidden quote and unquote people marry her. So Jacob was asked to work for 7 years to get Rachel's hand in marriage. But here's what Laban did. On the night of the marriage, instead of giving out Rachel, Laban gives out Rachel's sister, Leah. Now, as the Bible records, Leah wasn't as beautiful as Rachel. But Jacob discovers the trick the next day, and Laban says, look, you're already married to Leah anyway, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to get you to work another 7 years for Rachel. So in total, Jacob works 14 years for his 2 wives. But you know what? When Leah is going to be married off, Laban gives Leah a maid servant by name Zilpah. And he also gives Rachel another handmaid named Bilhah. So you have 4 women in the life of Jacob. We also know that while Jacob loved Rachel, he didn't love Leah so much. But the Bible said the Lord saw this and decided to close Rachel's womb. And as a result of that, Leah was able to bear children, but Rachel couldn't. Now, when Rachel realized that she wasn't able to bear children, she gave her handmaid Bilhah to Jacob as a wife. And when Leah saw that, Leah also gave her handmaid to Jacob as a wife. So between the 4 of them, they started giving birth. Well, actually, between the 3 of them, amongst the 3 of them, they started giving birth. The Bible records that Rachel did not give birth to her first child until Jacob was 90 years old. And when she gave birth to Joseph. Joseph was the 11th child of 12 sons. So Joseph actually had 11 half brothers, 1 full brother, Benjamin, and a half sister. So this was the home within which Jacob grew up. 11 half brothers. And you see, this brings us to the account that was recorded, which is where we're going to be drawing our first lesson about the life of Jacob. And it's in Genesis chapter 37 from verse 2 to verse 4. And I'm going to be reading that from the New Living Translation. And this is what it says. It says, "This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. Isn't it ironic that as a result of the love that Jacob had for his son Joseph, his brothers hated him? The Bible says they couldn't say a kind word to him. We've all heard about the coat of many colors, which is how the robe was described, of what the present, the gift that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. So it means the hatred that Joseph experienced was subject to the favoritism that he was enjoying from their father. You see, we can look at this from actually a different perspective. And today, you know what, I want to actually speak to parents out there and leaders or managers of teams. I want to talk to you today about favoritism. You see, as parents or leaders, you need to realize that by showing this type of favoritism, you are actually creating breathing ground for all sorts of issues within your team or within your kids. But before we go into the heart of it, the interesting thing about this story is that history seems to be repeating itself in this issue of favoritism. Because if you look at the life of Jacob, if you look at his family, Jacob himself had been a recipient of such attention when he was growing up. And it seems that he had forgotten the consequences of the favoritism that he enjoyed while he was growing up. You see, if we go to Genesis 27, from chapter 27, from verse 1, it says this. It says, one day, so we're going back into the life of Jacob to see how favoritism was ripe there and what happened. It says, one day, when Isaac was old. Now, Isaac is the father of Jacob. It says, one day when Isaac was old and turning blind, he called for Esau. Now, Esau is Jacob's brother, twin brother. He called for Esau, his older son, and said, "My son." "Yes, my father," Esau replied. "I am an old man now," Isaac said, "and I don't know when I may die. Take your bow and a quiver full of arrows and go out into the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare my favorite dish and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessings that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die." But Rebekah was the mother of both Esau and Jacob. So it says, but Rebekah overheard what Isaac had said to his son Esau. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, she said to her son Jacob, "Listen, I overheard your father say to Esau, 'Bring me some wild game and prepare me a delicious meal. Then I will bless you in the Lord's presence before I die. Now, my son, listen to me. Do exactly as I tell you. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I will use them to prepare your father's favorite dish. Then take the food to your father so he can eat it and bless you before he dies.' But look," Jacob replied to Rebekah, "my brother Esau is a hairy man, and my skin is smooth, What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him, and then he'll curse me instead of blessing me. But his mother replied, then let the curse fall on me, my son. Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats for me. So Jacob went out and got the young goats for his mother. Rebekah took them and prepared a delicious meal, just the way Isaac liked it. Then she took Esau's favorite clothes, which were there in the house, and gave them to her younger son, Jacob. She covered his arm and the smooth part of his neck with the skins of the young goats. Then she gave Jacob the delicious meal, including the freshly baked bread. I mean, what type of love makes one parent conspire to deprive one child in favor of the other? What sort of love is that? Now, I'm not going to be too hasty to condemn that. But what I'm saying today is, if we're looking at the issue of favoritism, we're looking at how it can impact on a family or on a team. I mean, if you look at the reasons for this, I think you can find the reasons of why, perhaps why Jacob seemed to have loved Esau while Rebekah seemed to have loved Jacob. Because in Genesis 25:27 says, as the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoors man, but Jacob had a quiet temperament, preferring to stay at home. So Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed eating the wild game Esau brought home, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So in this case, it may have been an issue of their personality types, but you know what? As a result of that incident, Esau vowed that he was going to kill Jacob, and which was why Jacob had to flee from his home because of favoritism of one parent to the other. And not just that, not one other consequence for this issue of favoritism in this home, in Isaac's home, was we can find in the fact that because Jacob ran away from home, Esau decided to make life slightly unbearable for his parents. In Genesis 27:46, it says, then Rebekah said to Isaac, I am sick and tired of this local Hittite women. I would rather die than see Jacob marry one of them. Now, Esau realizes that his mom wouldn't like the idea that they get married to a certain group of women. So here's what Esau did. In Genesis 28:6, it says, Esau knew that his father Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him to Padan Aram to find a wife, and that he had warned Jacob, you must not marry a Canaanite woman. He also knew that Jacob had obeyed his parents and gone to Padan Aram. It was now very clear to Esau that his father did not like the local Canaanite women. So guess what Esau did? Listen to this. So Esau visited his uncle Ishmael's family and married one of the Ishmaelites' daughter, in addition to the wives he already had. His new wife's name was Mahatal. She was the daughter of Neobot and the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son. What am I getting at? Because of the favoritism existent in this family, Esau decided to get back at his parents. Since he realized that he wouldn't be able to kill his brother because his brother has run away, he decided to get back at his parents. So, this is what we're talking about. That favoritism being expressed by parents could be detrimental. In fact, one of the consequences of favoritism is the fact that it could last for a long, long time. But you know what? In researching this topic, I came across a really, really interesting article in Psychology Today. This article was posted sometimes in 2009, January the 10th in 2009, and it was actually written by an assistant professor of psychology in the University of South Alabama. His name is Joshua Foster, and he was also co-written by Ilan Shishra. He is also a social psychologist, and they titled it "When Parents Play Favorites," preferring one child over the other. And I picked out a few details that I think would be interesting in discussing this issue of favoritism and how it can actually impact on a home. Now, listen to this. It says, nearly all parents worry about whether they play favorites. But when parents vow to treat their children equally, they soon find that this is just not possible. Every child is different, and parents must respond to their unique characteristics appropriately. Okay? So, as parents, what you need to do is to recognize that every single child that you're given by God is unique, and in treating them, in relating with them, you have to take that uniqueness into consideration. They said you shouldn't react, or you shouldn't definitely shouldn't react to a 3-year-old's tantrum in the same way as you would to a 13-year-old. You can't deal with aggressiveness in children in the same way. You cannot deal with aggressive children in the same way as passive children. Even identical twins can't be treated identically. When it comes down to it, every child wants to feel like they are different, not a clone of their siblings. The best parents can do is to stay aware of any differential treatment they give and try to be as fair as possible. You know what? It's important to keep in mind that parental favoritism is only problematic when there are consistent and arbitrary differences in treatment. I would say that again. It's important to keep in mind that parental favoritism is only problematic when there are consistent and arbitrary differences in treatment. So when there's a consistent and arbitrary difference in the way you treat your kids, I mean, when it smells of favoritism. But in some cases, favoritism is actually unavoidable. Or, you know what? It could even be fair and even necessary under certain circumstances. For example, parents give more attention to newborns than they do to their older children. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Same could also go for children who are sick or children who may be disabled. But you see, in these circumstances, in these situations, parents who now take out time to explain the necessity of their behavior to their other children can usually offset any negative consequences that may arise. So where favoritism is unavoidable, like in the cases that we've just highlighted, parents should go out of their way, actually leaders also, not even just parents, should go out of their way to explain to the other members of the team or other children, this is why this is going on at this point in time. But you know what? I want us to look at some of the reasons why some parents might practice favoritism. And the very first issue I wanted to look at is under certain circumstances, it is possible that certain parents may feel closer to same gender children than they do to the opposite gender children. It's crazy. But hey, we're trying to highlight some of these reasons. And as I'm discussing these issues, I really want you to look back. Look around you, particularly if this doesn't have to do with you. Look around you and ask yourself, well, why is there favoritism in this group or in that team or in that home, as I said? It may be because certain parents feel closer to same gender children that they do to opposite genders. In some other cases, in mixed families, and this is common, in mixed families, you could have parents who favor their biological children over their stepchildren. That could be another reason why there's favoritism. Well, this is my child. This child came out from my loins. I'm going to love that child more than I love this child who's not from my own loins. In some other cases, favoritism could be culture driven, because in some cultures, parents simply favor boys over girls. And in some other cultures, parents actually favor girls over boys. In some cases, favoritism could be a function of the birth order of the children. So you have a situation where firstborns, under certain circumstances, get treated specially. They are spoiled, particularly if they are male in certain cultures. But in some other cultures, it could be the last born who gets showered with all the attention. So why is there favoritism in my home? We need to ask. So it may be one or two of these reasons. In some cases, it might just be the personality or behavior of the child. It might be a child who has a really similar personality profile with you. We looked at the story of Jacob and Esau and realized that one of the major reasons why Isaac favored Jacob and why Isaac favored Esau and Rebekah favored Jacob was because of their temperaments. Jacob was a homeboy. Esau was a fieldman, an outdoor person. So it might be the temperament of the child that draws you to that child and gets you to favor that child in cases that you feel necessary. Or sometimes it could be the child's behavior. Maybe the child has a very positive behavior, does well in school, very obedient. Is that enough reason for you to just favor that child over and above your other kids? Think about it. Sometimes it could be favoritism could show up when parents are under a lot of stress. It might be financial stress. It might be marital stress. Whatever the stress is, we realize that people or humans are not able to. Their level of objectivity is greatly impacted when they're going through stress. So sometimes it might just be a stress-free situation where parents just snap and they act in ways that they shouldn't, and that could be construed as favoritism. Well, these are some of the reasons why favoritism might exist, and I've taken our time to highlight this so that you can look into your family and ask yourself, are there reasons in here that may be impacting how I'm conducting myself towards my children? Now, what about some of the consequences of this sort of behavior? When I favor one child over the other, what are some of the consequences? I'm going to discuss three of them. One is the fact that the disfavored child or the disfavored children, usually they experience the worst outcome across board. I mean, if you look at what their experiences are like, they end up sometimes much more depressed. Sometimes they can be a greater level of aggression experienced with them. And if you look at the story of how Joseph's brothers treated him, you'd realize that this was really clear. They did not like him for any reasons. Sometimes you could have the disfavored child or children showing cases of low self-esteem, lacking confidence. Sometimes they may even be performing poorly in school as a result of how they're being treated or how they think they're being treated at home. Secondly, the child that is being favored may not also find it rosy, because the favored child could end up being resented by his siblings. They could be bullied by their siblings. I mean, they are considered as the enemy. And what then happens is that you end up in a situation where the relationship that they have amongst themselves as kids is poisoned. And sometimes as a parent, if you're not careful, you may not even be noticing it. You may not notice it. In some other cases, many of the consequences of this favoritism will persist long after the children have grown up and have even moved out of the house. Many people report that being disfavored as a child continues to affect their self-esteem and their relationships with their siblings, even as adults. A good example, again, goes back to Jacob and Esau. Let me read something out quickly to you. This is Genesis 32. It says, now, Jacob had run away to Laban. He had lived years there. He had become so wealthy. But now he's about to come back home to confront Esau. Look at what happened. This is Genesis 32 from verse 3. He says, then Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother Esau, who was living in the region of Seir, in the land of Edom. He told them, give this message to my master Esau. Humble greetings from your servant Jacob. Until now I have been living with Uncle Laban, and now I own cattle, donkeys, flocks of sheep and goats, and many servants, both men and women. Why is he bragging for? You should just send the message in the first place. It says, I have sent these messengers to inform my lord of my coming, hoping that you will be friendly to me. After delivering the message, the messengers returned to Jacob and reported, we met your brother Esau, and he's already on his way to meet you with an army of 400 men. Jacob was terrified at the news. He divided his household along with the flocks and herds and camels into two groups. He thought, if Esau meets one group and attacks it, perhaps the other group can escape. Then Jacob prayed, O God of my grandfather Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, you told me, return to your own land and to your relatives. And you promised me, I will treat you kindly. I am not worthy of all the unfailing love and faithfulness you've shown me, your servant. When I left home and crossed the Jordan River, I owned nothing except a walking stick. Now my household fills 2 large camps. O Lord, please rescue me from the hands of my brother Esau. I am afraid he's coming to attack me along with my wives and my children. This was long after they had parted ways. They were both adults. They had families. God had blessed both of them. Yet, the impact of the favoritism that Jacob experienced when he was a child hadn't been resolved. Well, the good news was that Esau had forgiven him because their meeting was fruitful, and they became cordial once more. Now, I have to address specifically now the leaders and managers that will be listening to this. You know what? Still on the issue of favoritism. Now, while it may not always be on purpose, a leader or a manager may just naturally gravitate towards someone in their team. It could be because of the person performs the best, or simply because their personalities blend, like I talked about earlier. Or it could just be that member of the team has mastered the skill of just kissing up to the boss. But for whatever reason it is, as a manager or as a leader, there is no question that favoritism in the workplace or within a team is bad for business, in the short run and as well as on the long run. You know what? Favoritism within any team will breed resentment amongst team members. It will destroy morale within the team. How would you want to be in charge? How would you love to be the leader of the team where morale is dampened and where there's consistent backbiting and resentment within the team? Favoritism within a team could also act as a disincentive for good performance. Look, once team members see that it is beneficial to be on the manager, on the leader's good side, rather than from doing a great job, what do you think would happen? There's little point working hard. If I know all I need to do is to kiss up to the manager, what do? I do that if I want to be promoted at all costs, or if I want to get my way at all costs. Question, as a team leader, do you want to be in charge of such a team? Favoritism in the workplace or within a team also leads inevitably to lost productivity. Why? Employees who feel disfavored spend more and more time gossiping about what's going on, what shouldn't be happening. They gripe about the unfairness of the system rather than doing their job. Why? Because the person in charge has decided to show favoritism. This point cannot be overemphasized. So as a parent, as a leader, as a manager, one of the things you want to kick out is the issue of favoritism amongst your children or within the team that you lead, because the consequences are not good either in the short run or in the long run. Actually, in some cases, while you might be able to escape some of the consequences in the short run, on the long run, they tend to show up. Once again, you've been listening to Perspectives on PRZ 109.2 FM. And as I close, I'd like to encourage you to please go out this week and do a critical examination of all the things I've said today. If you'd like to listen to this broadcast again, log on to SoundCloud. It's a free app. You can download it. And not only can you listen to the broadcast of Perspective, you can also listen to other broadcasts from other presenters on the Prayer Rally Zone. Or you can keep up with me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or on Instagram. I've got loads of videos, short clips, 60 seconds, life transforming and impacting videos that will do you good. But until we meet again next week, this is what I would say. Do something, no matter what it is, at least one thing, no matter how small, that will take you one step closer to that better life. And until we meet again, I'd like to say thank you, God bless you, and have a beautiful week. Bye-bye.
Your culture, education, upbringing, beliefs, experiences, imagination, relationships, personality, and your values are some of the things that have not just eaten deep into your nature, but they have become your very nature. When was the last time you questioned any of these things? When was the last time you questioned how you think? Join me, Emmanuel Utomi, and my guests every Monday from 9 p.m. on PRZ 109.2 FM London on Perspectives, because how you think powers your worldviews, actions, and your ultimate reality. So, come on. Let us explore alternative ways of looking at life's issues. Perspectives. What you already know should not stand in the way of what you could learn.